and I won.
Yes.
Reports of a divide inside the Democratic Party. Moderates now facing threats and political retribution if they work with Republicans. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi reportedly scolding more than 24 Democrats who broke rank to support a Republican amendment in a gun control bill this week. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez taking it a step further by threatening to put those Democrats on a list for a primary challenge if they vote with the GOP in the future. This is very interesting because how did they win in the midterms, Greg? It wasn't necessarily the left. It was in those moderate swing districts where they have to be able to vote as their constituents want.
I like how you asked me that question and then you answered it.
See how I did that? It's called leading the witness.
Fantastic, you know. I need to rest my brain after beating Jesse yesterday on Tucker.
Yeah.
Was it that hard?
Yeah.
How many times
Good point.
did it come up today?
It'll come up every segment. Okay, this strategy, to your point, mistakenly gives the power to the very people that they're trying to punish. Suddenly moderates and kind of independent minds have like the power of 10 of their peers. Like, think about like...
Yeah,
think
they're
about,
like the Freedom Caucus
like, yeah, think about like, what's his name? Rand Paul. Every time there has to be a vote, everybody has to go to Rand Paul. They all have to run to Rand Paul and see, Rand, would you do this? Would you do that? And also, remember Susan Collins with the Kavanaugh thing?
Yes.
It's great to be that person, the person that everybody has to wonder and worry about. I love stalemates. One of the great things about your parents fighting is that they overlook the stuff you're doing, you know, so you can stay out later and they don't notice in the liquor cabinet every bottle got slightly less.
So fought a lot, I bet.
Yes, well, not as much as I would have liked. But so... What I mean is less work gets done in the government with stalemates. Stalemates, it's kind of its own form of limited government.
Right. When they're not doing anything. Usually the stock market is happier, too.
Yes.
When the government's not doing anything. Would you like to have been a fly on the wall at this meeting, Jesse?
Yes, definitely. Dana,
Yeah?
let's be honest here. There is a statistic in sports called plus or minus.
Oh, yeah, it's hard.
It measures the player's impact on the game, when they're on the bench and when they're on the field, and how the other team's scoring on the opposing player.
Sports planing.
Did I just mansplain?
Yes, you did.
But I welcome it.
Okay, good, but I thought you needed it.
I do need it. Plus or minus.
AOC, if you look at it, Republicans are scoring so many points because of AOC. If you think about the Green New Deal, socialism, abolish ICE, and then being okay with illegal immigrants crossing the border to go buy guns and then not telling anybody that the illegals are trying to buy guns, that is so crazy. If the Democrats lose the House in 2020, they're going to be Democrats pointing their finger at AOC. And on top of that, she wants to create a civil war. This is like, she's like the Steve Bannon of the left now. Remember what happened with the Tea Party? You get some good candidates like a Rubio or a Cruz, and then you get your Aikens, and you get some crazy
Christine
people.
O'Donnell.
Christina the witch.
I'm not a witch. I'm you.
Right. But, I love when Democrats fight each other. I just, sit back and relax and love it.
To Jesse's point, take a look at this poll, Kennedy. This was in the Wall Street Journal. Question about Medicare for all. So in November of 2018, when the election was happening, that was about 30% support. Where is it today? 12%.
It's a hell of a chart, Dana.
What do you think about that chart?
I think it's a great chart.
Thank you.
Excellent chart.
Thank you. I think it's because we're talking about the issues rather than just about personalities.
And that's fantastic, but I think the problem with progressives is they feel the cult of personality will sell the idea. The problem is, voters are more tuned in than they have been in the past because everyone is talking about politics nowadays. One of my bosses pointed out that this is the new water cooler. It used to be the Kardashians, and now it's President Trump and Congress. And so people go one step further on a lot of issues, and they go, wait a second, what does this cost? And that's how, and Maria and I have talked about this a lot, moderate Democrats who have made inroads in the party in critical parts of the country. And Nancy Pelosi and AOC, a brand new freshman congresswoman, is telling them they have to vote in lockstep. Do you think that's going to be popular with their purple constituencies back home? No way. If they throw off the blob and show some independence, they are much more electable. And if I want this job for a long time, and by the way, I don't know who would want this job. If you've got people telling you, if you don't vote a certain way, if you show any independence or logic at all, you're going on a list, that's a horrible job.
That's right. And Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, with her list, apparently Congresswoman Torres Small, also a freshman. She won that seat in New Mexico, too.
New Mexico, right.
And it was a very close race. It's right there on the border. Mm-hmm. And apparently she stood up in the meeting, Marie, and she said, you don't know how hard it is to actually run in a district where it's hard. I mean, obviously, AOC beat the incumbent Democrat,
in a very liberal
but
district.
she didn't have to run in a very tough race.
And I think Democrats are seeing a little bit of what the Republicans went through, and they're still seeing it, right? You're having very hardcore right-wing folks threatening to primary Republicans. That's why so many moderate Republicans didn't run in 2018, because they didn't want to get that kind of inter-party primary. Look, these members who won in 2018, the moderate Democrats, I do not think they are going to fall lockstep in line with AOC, and I don't think AOC supporting primary challengers in these districts will actually work. If we look at these moderate districts or moderate states, in 2018, the Democrats that won the primaries were moderates. They beat much more progressive. Look at Virginia in the governor's race, for example. Tom Perriello, really progressive. He was beat by Ralph Northam. He lost. So I think that...
I bet you wish the other guy had won.
That's actually...
You mean Ed Gillespie?
Yes, that other guy.
I don't wish that. But that's actually been an interesting discussion, Jesse. But no, I think that AOC is very good at getting people to talk about her. The question that will face voters is who's done something for you? And the moderate Democrats, I think, have plans to say, here's what I voted on that would have benefited you. Here's how I've tried to help you. And she is really, I mean, she is getting so much grief from inside the party for threatening to primary people when she's not done anything yet in Congress.
Can I add something to that very quickly? Sure. Because if you're talking about moderate Democrats, they're the ones who are coming up with ideas to push forward an agenda, which is the opposite of what Democratic leadership is doing, especially in the House. They don't have ideas. They have resistance. And even though Nancy Pelosi...
Let me grab this other topic here, because there's another example of liberal outrage. Joe Biden forced to apologize after making this statement about Mike Pence.
The fact of the matter is, it was followed on by a guy who's a decent guy, our vice president, who stood before this group of allies and leaders and said, I'm here on behalf of President Trump. And there was dead silence.
After receiving tons of backlash for calling Pence a decent guy, Biden backtracked, tweeting in part, quote, there is nothing decent about being anti-LGBTQ rights, and that includes the vice president. So, Greg, you can't even say someone's a nice guy even if you disagree with them.
You know, you can believe that Pence is incorrect in his beliefs and still see Biden as a really weak person because he didn't change his mind. He folded to a mob on social media. I mean, if he gets that easily spooked, which is the opposite of being a leader, how is he going to handle the Twitter mob or even Trump in a debate? I mean, if you fold that quickly, Joe should have said, you know what? Pence was where I was, 15 years ago. And do I dislike who I was 15 years ago? No, I thought I was a pretty good guy. I still think he's a pretty good guy. It's also interesting how one religion gets the shaft a lot on this, but another religion doesn't.
What do you make of that in terms of, I think that's a really good point. If Joe Biden had said, look, a leadership position, if the number 2 issue in the country is a worry about polarization, is a way for him to deal with it, to be the leader that says, actually, you know what, we can all do this. We're all Americans.
Yeah, he caved to the resistance. And you know my motto, Dana.
What?
Never apologize. Like I said, it makes you look weak and soft.
The art of the Jesse.
Yes.
Served you so well.
In 2020, it has. And in 2020, it's going to be the Democrats who apologize for everything and Trump who apologizes for nothing. So it's going to be a great clash. And to Greg's point, Joe Biden was an indecent man just 5 years ago or 10 years ago when he had the same position on traditional marriage. It doesn't make you anti-LGBTQ. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I got it.
If you're against traditional marriage, you can be Christian and not hate gay people like they're trying to smear Pence as. And didn't the Trump administration just push for a worldwide decriminalization of homosexuality? He doesn't get any credit there.
Marie?
I think what this lesson tells us is that what we are seeing in many of these primary states out on the road now that candidates are talking to voters is that voters care about a very different set of things than the online Twitter mob. And so if people running in this primary want to reach primary voters, they cannot suck up their time and energy doing what Greg says, getting tied into the mob, responding to everything, because when you look at issues even like Elizabeth Warren and the Native American issue, voters aren't asking her about it.
That's so true. And you know what? You have a good perspective because you're not on Twitter.
I am not on Twitter.
And I admire that so much. Kennedy, a last word.
No, I think Greg and Marie have it absolutely right. You know, Greg's right. And
Whoa. I thought I said something coherent.
Yeah, you know what?
Never apologize.
This segment is about winners. If you had won last night, you would have gotten a shout out.
Ouch.
But you cannot fold to the mob, and you cannot anticipate them, and you also cannot pacify them, so don't even try. And this election is going to be very different than 2016. It's not just going to be acrimonious. Democrats have to decide, do they want a cheap, pale impression of President Trump and, to do the kind of things and sling the kind of insults that they see,
right,
or do they want someone who is actually strong and can lead the country? Because sometimes being strong means saying, you know what, I'm not gonna talk about identity politics every time I open my mouth, because again, you're not talking to the people who are going to
and just
vote for
blaze
against
that
you.
trail.